Whenever a fighting game character gets a revamp, whether it's visually, moveset, or backstory-wise, there's a risk that people will just want the old character back. And ever since I did my video on good fighting game character redesigns, I've had the evil thought lurking in my head asking, are there any redesigns that are just unbearable? I'm a positive guy, so I tend to not get bothered usually. The old version of the character still exists in the old games, and sometimes we get a classic outfit anyway, so if it misses, no big deal. But every so often, there's a design change that almost ruins a character for me, or at least my hype dies down for them after seeing the changes. So for this video, I want to look at some of my least favorite redesigns in fighting games. They can redesign any element, visuals, graphics, moveset, lore changes, all fair game. Only restriction is one character per series of origin. And since this is a negative list, you know the drill. It's just my opinion. I'm happy if you like what I don't. Also, like, comment, subscribe. Now, let's shake our fists at the top 10 worst fighting game character redesigns. Number 10. Paul Phoenix in Tekken 8. Tekken character redesigns have never really ruffled my feathers. Even when characters get completely new looks, the old outfits tend to be the immediate alternate costumes, and the games have loads of customization. So I'll default to what the fans were saying about this one. Paul in Tekken 8. The fans were confused why they did that to his hair. Paul has been a mainstay since the first Tekken, and always has a key set of traits in each game, with the moveset using judo and having some very aggressive punches, with the biggest being his burning fist, a slow to start up unblockable punch on fire, all of which was in Tekken 8. And for the design, he had two big constants, his bushy angular eyebrows, which the Tekken 8 design carries over, and his cylindrical hair, which is a clear reference to Polnareff from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because JoJo's references are like in all the 90s Japanese fighting games. However, after 7 games and 2 spin-offs of having the flat top hair, Tekken said no more and just, I guess, removed the hair gel. I appreciate the bold nature of changing a main part of a character's design so it's not the same thing for 30 years, but like no one else on the base roster had their hairstyles changed. Usually when he gets new designs, it involves outfits, like switching between gi and biker gear, and those tend to be good default designs. But as mentioned, I just can't get worked up about this, since if you go into his preset alternate costumes, the cylindrical hair is right there. I don't even have to do anything to unlock it, so it feels like this was just done for the shock value of seeing Paul without his fun hair. This wasn't the only time he had hair like this either. His Tekken 4 alt had him in casual wear with the hair down, though I was never much of a fan of that costume. He looks too much like a different guy. At least the Tekken 8 look gives him that down but never out face of Paul Phoenix, so overall, I don't really get this redesign, but I appreciate the attempt.
Yeah! You win. I'm in top condition.
Number 9. Billy Khan in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. This is another Paul Phoenix situation where I think the design works on a standalone level, but there's a lot of weird factor to it in getting rid of a mainstay of a character's design that's been there since the first game, and it involves the top of the head again. No game depicted Billy without his bandana on default. There were 2 variations of the stripe pattern on it, but regardless of how much he changed his outfit between the overalls, Union Jack, no shirt jacket, and suit, the bandana stays on. But in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, where all the long-standing characters got redesigns if they didn't already have them, Billy's outfit is otherwise fine. He's got a shirt, jacket, and pants all in line with other outfits in the past, but the lack of bandana makes him feel like a different guy. Like this is just Bill from accounting. I don't actually think he looks generic here. He does look cool, especially when you see him in action, but his head just looks like it belongs on a different person. Who even knew his hair was blonde? Well, actually it was always sticking out from under the bandana, but the point is, it's so synonymous with his character design. And yes, in the King of Fighters Maximum Impact spin-off games, he did have a bandana-less alternate outfit, but those games are obscure and I forgot about them. Like, this is one of those redesigns I feel bad for putting on the worst list, since it's good, but my reaction is more, it'll take some getting used to when I saw it. Compare that to some of the other redesigned outfits like Mai or Tizok or Terry the first time it happened, where I immediately identified them and I didn't hesitate in accepting the new outfits. It also doesn't help that Terry, Mai, and the Street Fighter characters got their classic outfits as alternates, but Billy did not. He's got 3 well-known outfits, surely one would suffice, but as I said, it's a good character design. I just would not have expected his name to be attached to this character. Until I saw that poll, then I did.
Mind the stop! Back to the Wait! End of the road.
Number 8. Tusk in Killer Instinct 2013. Killer Instinct 2013 had no bad redesigns to me. I loved the direction they went with every character to either modernize the original design while keeping the same vibe, like Jago still being a mostly silent ninja just with new gear, or rewriting the story to be in spirit with the original concept but giving us a new backstory and playstyle choices, like the 2-headed idol now being an ogre with a single head that's cut in half, with each side specializing in either magic or brute force. This redesign love also goes for the topic of this entry, Tusk, who used to just be a straight up Conan the Barbarian clone, but now he's more of a standard Viking with a Scottish or Nordic inspired accent. The backstory was fine and the moveset was cool with long range swings of his sword. The one thing about his redesign though that spoils it a bit but not really was the face. It looks like it belongs on an older console, like this is early Xbox 360 graphics, and I have no idea how this happened. The art style of this game was fairly consistent. It wasn't trying to emulate the old 3D sprite design, it was just doing its own thing, and it worked for the game. Tusk feels like an anomaly since the face loses resolution when you look at it up close. The rest of his body might also have this art style issue, but it's hard to tell when you're actually moving around with him and, playing the game and having fun and not looking at the art and nitpicking, but it's most noticeable on the face for me. Looking at any other human face in this game, they seem very smooth, so I've always wondered why it just affected him. That being said, Killer Instinct 2013 is one of the best fighting game reboots ever, so a questionable face on a fun character being the worst thing I can say about it is a testament to how much the game hits.
Death comes to all, except me.
Number 7. Superman in Injustice 2. Injustice is the DC Comics fighting game series with the ongoing storyline of Superman becoming a dictator for the sake of good and then spiraling downwards, and other threats coming to Earth that force him to work with the heroes that broke away from him. The evil Superman storyline has definitely been criticized fairly for how things turned out in the comics based around the games, but viewing the fighting games as standalones, I have fun. Mechanics are cool, story mode is fun to go through, and the designs certainly are unique, and that's positive, negative, and neutral. DC Comics gave the developer NetherRealm Studios more reign on character costumes, so some characters look closer to their comic counterparts, while others have some creative liberties. For the Superman design in the first game, it was Superman. It had the washed out color scheme of DC Comics from the early 2010s, but I liked it. And the alternate costumes in the game were the Injustice universe counterparts, where evil Superman pretty much looked the same, just with shoulder pads and a pseudo underwear on the outside pattern on his suit. Once again, it's what I'd expect. In Injustice 2 though, where evil Superman was the default Superman, they added this metal chin strap, and I just don't get it. Superman doesn't need facial armor, he's Superman, and if he did, that ain't covering anything. As for the rest, the armor on the suit is fine. I think it's a bit too over-designed, but I'm so distracted by that chin strap that I never would have considered the rest of the outfit as weird without that headpiece. Why did he wear that? It looks so dumb. When looking for any meaning behind it, someone mentioned that it's related to traditional Kryptonian royalty, which fits with how Superman thinks he's higher than thou in this game. I appreciate the explanation, but it doesn't save it from looking stupid. Luckily, Injustice 2 has a lot of customization, so it's easy to remove, but I've never played Superman outside the story mode, so mine only has his questionable headwear. Number 6. Ken in Street Fighter V. This one is kinda low-hanging fruit since it was a massive meme when Ken's model was first shown off for this game, but if the shoe fits. Street Fighter characters went a while without any major redesigns to their default looks. Street Fighter 2 through 4 pretty much had the same default designs for everyone, with a few exceptions in the alpha games when showing the main characters' younger selves. Street Fighter V, though, was the first time we got a design overhaul, with nearly every returning character getting a new default design. Even if you weren't a fan of some of the new looks, like with Tekken, it didn't matter much since the classic outfits were alternate costumes for everyone. There were definitely some redesigns people were down on, like Birdie or the lion mane of Akuma, but those can be changed back to the classics. Ken, however, had a problem with his face. It just looked weird. Like, I feel it speaks for itself. His eyes, his smile, and it wasn't helped out by the hair, where I see what they were doing with it being long and in a ponytail, but the art style of this game just makes it look like bananas. He has the hair of Panty from Panty and Stocking, but no matter how much you change the outfit, the face stays the same, and depending on the hair of his alts, you'll notice his eyebrows are also extended a bit too far, making his facial expressions feel even more whatever emotion this is supposed to be. Don't do the costume with the short hair, or do, it's funny. Come Street Fighter 6, Ken's face was back to normal, but he had other things to deal with in that game, like having to abandon his family so some shadowy figures would not attack them to get to Ken, which people misinterpreted as his wife leaving him, leading to Ken divorce memes before we knew the full story. Poor Ken had to deal with slanderous memes across all of modern Street Fighter. Even the face in 5 isn't that bad in motion, it's mainly how it looks on the versus screen. The issue is, you have to see that versus screen a lot if you play as Ken in this game, so you can't help but stare at his scary face and his hair that's full of potassium.
I did it!
Number 5. Clark and Ralph in the King of Fighters 13. I have a love-hate relationship with the King of Fighters 13 art style. On one hand, it has some of the most detailed sprites in the history of any video game. The frames of animation on stuff like Kim Cap-1's pants or Mai Shiranui jiggle are so amazing, just don't ask how much it cost to make it happen. And plenty of other characters looked so smooth with the sprite work in this game. But the main art style issue I had with these characters were some of the more muscular ones were like double the size from the previous games, and it looked kinda awkward. I think it was especially noticeable on characters like Ryo, whose head looked tiny compared to his body. He's got the New Adventures of Batman Bane head going on. And Takuma, who had a great new pose, was way more bulky now. Even the most famous character, Terry Bogard, was more pumped than he should be. However, the characters that felt the most affected by this change were Clark and Ralph. I'm including both of them here since it's the same issues for them. They were always buff dudes being trained mercenaries on the Ikari Warriors team, but in this game, they looked roided out where they were pretty much doubled in size. I can't imagine them having the speed to do their classic attacks now. Clark uses wrestling with some speed, and Ralph's a brawler, who can be slow, but he still has fast things like the Gatling punches going on. On one hand, they were based on Sylvester Stallone since their original game, Ikari Warriors, was meant to be a Rambo game, so changing their sizes does line up with their origin, but even in Ralph and Clark's most classic art, they're not this big. It feels off. I think what makes it the most noticeable is they're both shirtless now compared to all the other King of Fighters games when they had shirts and vests on. Great for the muscle enjoyers out there, but it makes this newfound bulk stick out more. Maybe they got so buff, their original shirts no longer fit. The real reason was they were going for a classic design based on the Ikari Warriors games for the King of Fighters 13. And another design change was their old vests were changed to assault vests, which took away another well-known visual trait from the King of Fighters games. Clark was known for wearing a blue vest and Ralph a green vest. Here though, they're both just wearing the same color vest, with their headwear being the only thing to visually differentiate their clothing. The colors on them just felt too dim in general in this game. The funny thing is, when they went back to their normal sizes in the King of Fighters 14 and 15, they did not get their classic vests back, but they did get their shirts back with the proper color scheme, and Ralph even got camo pattern pants now. So I guess these count as redesigns too, and I would say they're solid, not better or worse, just on par with the originals. But for the King of Fighters 13 versions, they're at least funny for how odd these guys looked. Number 4. Keelik in Soul Calibur 5. Soul Calibur 5 was infamous for missing a lot. Very little solo modes, a story that cut out a lot of the roster and used a lot of still images, no arcade mode endings, watering down some movesets, and replacing about half the roster with new characters that had near identical movesets of old characters, being the new generation with less interesting personalities, though some had potential. I missed Cassandra, but I liked that Pyrrha Omega was crazy. That being said, I still had a lot of fun with Soul Calibur 5's Versus mode when it was out. The meter mechanic in that game made it worthwhile for me. I played it offline and online all the time. I had a pretty good Natsu. However, I probably would have had at least a bit more fun if Natsu was still Taki. And on that topic, characters that were replacing old characters were not well received. They were the children or students of old characters, but their personalities just didn't hit with fans. I could go into each one, but for the topic of this entry, the staff user of the series used to be Keelik, iconic character, uses a big pole. In Soul Calibur 5, he was replaced by Ziba, who was his estranged son with another character, Zhang Hua, who was replaced by her daughter Leisha, who she had with a different man since Keelik ran off to train, and that's a story element a lot of people didn't like. Ziba used Keelik's moves along with the moves of Song Mina, another long-range weapon user left off this roster. However, unlike every other character who was replaced, Keelik was not left off the roster of Soul Calibur 5. He was redesigned. Instead of being a staff user, he was now a mimic character. Mimic characters in these games randomly swap to different characters' movesets each round, and I wouldn't have an issue with this, but there were 3 mimics in this game. There's usually just 1 per Soul Calibur roster. Edgemaster was the true mimic of the game, using every character. Elysium was the final boss and only took the female movesets but had a unique super move, and Keelik used the male characters. They just made Keelik an inferior Edgemaster. Elysium was also an inferior Edgemaster, but at least she had a cool super and she was an angel, so I could dress her up as stocking with the created character. But Keelik, so much wasted potential. He was training to become a master like Edgemaster in the Unseen Story, but why not just make him the one and only mimic character by default? Edgemaster was in the story a bit as a mentor, but that easily could have been Keelik, who could have just had a line of exposition saying he trained with that guy and that's why he knows everything now. Or better yet, just give him his old moveset since Ziba is using a combined moveset. It would make them similar but not the same. We've had Rock and Astaroth on the same roster before, so we could deal with 2 staff users here too. And if they really wanted to do the Master of All Weapons story for him and still have Edgemaster as the mimic, they could have given Keelik something like Necrid's weapon that summons specific moves across the roster. I know Necrid wasn't really popular, but it is a solution. However, by instead making Keelik an incomplete mimic, I forgot he was even in this game, and that's probably a worse fate than being excluded.
I have reached.
KO.
It's fate. You weren't meant to win.
Number 3. Ghost Rider in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. People who know this game can probably guess why he's here. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite had an overall downgrade in art style compared to the previous game, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, so the entire game could be considered a bad redesign. But a character that was affected beyond the art style change was Ghost Rider. His outfit was basically the same as the previous game. Black jacket, black pants, of course the skull on fire, but the new design of his level 3 fiery super was one of the worst things ever. In Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Pen and Stare was his strongest hyper combo, where he grabs the opponent and stares deep into their soul, making them suffer for the pain they've inflicted on others, which is this cool animation of the fiery stare going into this vortex through his eye socket, making the opponent feel that they're being burned alive as it transitions into the flames clearing up on the field. Cool animation, and I never noticed how unique it was until the Infinite version dropped the ball.
Look into my eyes. Have a nice death.
So, how was it redesigned? Well, in Infinite, it starts with the stare, and then it ends after a long time. It quite literally is a stare. You do hear quick hits of damage and the opponent reacting off screen, which adds some extra comedy, but the best I can say is it has a so bad that it's good factor to it.
Finish you. I am vengeance incarnate. The engine of hell. Feel my fury.
It's so awkward for him just to sit there for 5 seconds, and it's like, okay, strongest attack. I'm assuming they imported the base animation from the old game, but didn't think to add the effects that made the old super pop. Outside of that, there's not much to complain about with this Ghost Rider. Infinite's legacy likely won't be anything grand, but this Pen and Stare sure helped it become memorable in some form, even if it's for the wrong reason.
Finish you. Wretched soul. Bear the weight of your sins. I can combo KO. You have challenged my Hellspawn power and lost.
Number 2, Dizzy in Guilty Gear Strive. Guilty Gear Strive is the redesign game of the series, updated movesets and new costumes for pretty much the whole roster, with no alternate outfits, so if you don't like any of them, you can only get them back in the older games. Prior to Strive, we rarely saw costume changes, so this was the first time many of these characters looked different, some drastically. I can respect how they didn't just want to play it safe with the same looks. We're seeing these characters advance in life, but as a result, I've heard a lot of fans not like these new designs since they went so far out with some of them, and I can see why for some. They changed the whole vibe of some characters, mainly the ones where they went for darker tones on the more friendly characters. As someone who mained Dizzy, I liked her new outfit, but changing her shape-shifting wings, which were an angel and a reaper, into these shadowy blob creatures took away some of the personality. They're just not funny anymore. But Dizzy's outfit on its own looks good. It's a completely different vibe from the old outfit, which is iconic to me since I saw it for so long, but the new outfit feels like it's supposed to be more regal since she's a queen now, so I have no issues. It's what they were going for. I like the flowers, though I would have suggested Pirate Dizzy if they asked me what she should wear now. And now that we got the nicer things out of the way, why did the wings go from the vibrant Angel and Reaper, named Undyne and Necro respectively, into shadowy blobs? This is why Dizzy makes the entry. On their own, they look cool and creepy, but knowing what they were before feels like they took away part of their soul. They still act like they're having fun, but their designs feel too samey. Maybe they evolve like this when Dizzy becomes more confident in herself, or her body as a gear is just developing more. But like, why can't it develop more with the old wing designs? Really, I should have specified Necro and Undyne at the start of this entry, since I'm so taken aback by the Shadow Wings and Dizzy is getting dragged for no reason. They still throw fire and ice like normal, so they work as intended, but I took their new look so personally, it almost got Dizzy to the top of this list when she was just standing there innocently.
Queen Dizzy wins.
For number 1, I went with the game whose story I was invested in for the longest, and not only did this character have one hell of a backstory downgrade in a game, but she was my main in some of the games before it, so talk about a hype killer for me. Number 1, Sindel in Mortal Kombat 11. Unlike most other fighting games, Mortal Kombat constantly redesigned characters from the start. When it was digitized humans as the fighters, if they couldn't get an actor back, they just found someone who who looked similar or just inexplicably changed a character's look overall. Then when you got into the 3D era of the series, models became more consistent, but they still tended to do new default costumes each game in spirit with the originals. And the same goes for the costumes of the rebooted timeline era that started with Mortal Kombat 2011 and continued with X, 11, and then Mortal Kombat 1 had the Liu Kang from the reboot make a new timeline, so the story is even more different now. The reboot from 2011 onwards even replicated costumes from the old games if you didn't like these new costumes. However, you really have to like Mortal Kombat 1 through 3. They loved those costumes. But the one thing costumes can't get rid of are rewrites to backstories. Most backstory redesigns in the series didn't bother me, since Mortal Kombat changes things as they please, like how Raiden was a wrathful god in the first game, but then became a mentor in following games before going dark, and then he wasn't again, and then he was, but only for like 5 minutes, not to mention movie Raiden who was more snarky and nonchalant, or the various animated Raidens, and I could do these examples for all of the long-standing characters. The point is, they constantly made changes, and I just rolled with the punches and highlighted my favorite versions of the changing backstories. But one of my favorite characters, Sindel, who I loved in Mortal Kombat 3 through 2011, had a backstory change so egregious, it actually made me like her less. Wait, no, we need something stronger. It actually made me hate her, at least in that game. She was the queen of a land called Edenia, which was conquered by main villain Shao Kahn. He killed her husband, King Gerard, and took her as his own queen. She took her life at some point after this, with the retcon in 2011 that her taking her life activated a spell that prevents him from conquering more realms, so it was a noble sacrifice. Shao, though, finds a loophole that reviving her on Earth lets him enter it so he can reclaim her and conquer Earth while he was there. And since he was reviving her, he adds some mind control to make her think that she was always his wife. Thankfully, Mortal Kombat 3 has the spell broken when Shao Kahn is defeated, and then we get a game later where she's good and rescues her daughter. The reboot has it go similarly, only she's killed before she has a chance to be unbrainwashed, but with the power of revival, they could just bring her back to undo it that way, right? Well, yes, but not how we expected. When she was revived in the story of Mortal Kombat 11, it was revealed that she was actually working with Shao Kahn this entire time. When she was at risk of losing her throne to Shao, she plotted with him to have him kill King Gerard back then, and they could rule as a power couple, so she pretended that she was only forced to rule aside him to hide her betrayal. And to rub in how apparently evil she was this whole time, she hated Kitana, her own daughter, since she was working with the forces against Shao Kahn, so she just kinda torments Kitana because of that. Like when her and Liu Kang were trying to hold hands while dying, she crushes Liu's arm. That is brutally vile, and I love pure evil characters. This would be cool if it was one of those characters, but to have an established good character turn into this without brain control just felt like such character assassination. She was never this evil. She always showed love for her daughters and was shown to be a good leader. The point of the brainwashed version of Sindel is to still give us evil Sindel without it affecting her true character. Even Mortal Kombat 2011, which takes place in this rebooted timeline, had Sindel's arcade mode ending remove the brainwashing and she went back to a flourishing Edenia, so it wasn't the apparent plan from the start. It's such a rug pull to turn a good character into such a demon with no hint. Remember, Sindel premiered in 1995. It's not like she was just in one game and then they changed her. I never understood why they wanted to make this change, and I don't think the fans did either. So in the following game, Mortal Kombat 1, with the rebuilt timeline, Sindel was a more caring person now who knew how to lead. She loved her family, she knew when to be strict, she led by example and in battle to protect her kingdom. And now, evil Sindel is brushed away into an alternate timeline never to be seen again. And no disrespect to them trying out something different here. They've tried out lots of new things that I've liked. I was a fan of the Liu Kang story in Mortal Kombat 11, which I highlighted on the good redesign list. Just Sindel did not work out once, but she worked out again. Mortal Kombat 11 Sindel was so disappointing to me, I never even covered her outfit or moveset update in this entry. The outfit was fine. I was more a fan of the previous game outfits, but it was in spirit with them. And the moveset was great. More sonic screams and hair manipulation, and you know I'm all about that. She also has this stationary sonic orb that releases smaller sonic blasts, and I've always liked that move. Sindel was fun in this game. I played her a lot, I just didn't like when she was, super evil. Anyway, I like the new Sindel, I like all the old Sindels, I just view them as having the old backstory, but the complete 180 Canadian story made Mortal Kombat 11 Sindel the worst redesign in fighting games to me. Now, what did you think? Were all these redesigns in need of a different redesign, or do I just have bad taste when it comes to seeing new things? And what are some of your least favorite fighting game character redesigns, whether I discussed them or not? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.